one of you is about to become Miss Universe. The other will be the first runner-up, an important position, because if for any reason Miss Universe cannot fulfill her obligations for the entire year, the first runner-up becomes Miss Universe. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I shall read the name of the first runner-up and then Miss Universe. The first runner-up is Miss USA. Miss New Zealand is Miss Universe.
It's the rise and the fall of Miss New Zealand. They had it all. Beauty and the fame, more than a pretty face. Beauty queen, wild and free. Miss Universe 1983. Lorraine with her bright blonde hair. All the world could really do was there. When she walked that walk and she talked that talk, with all that style, all that grace. Yeah, she never stopped till she reached the top, with a smile on her face. It's the rise and the fall of Miss New Zealand. They had it all. Beauty and the fame, more than a pretty face. Blast from the past, got the runner-up from 1963. Elaine Micall brought the boys to their knees. She was stunning, had them running in the palm of her hand. It's the rise and the fall of Miss New Zealand. They had it all. Beauty and the fame, more than a pretty face. Last but not least, we got the fan favorite, Delyse Nottle. She traveled all around the world with a gorgeous face. Yeah, she looks like Grace Kelly. When she walked that walk and she talked that talk, she was so amazing. It's the rise and the fall of Miss New Zealand. Miss New Zealand. They had it all. Beauty and the fame, more than a pretty face. It's the rise and the fall of Miss New Zealand. Miss New Zealand. They had it all. Beauty and the fame, more than a pretty face.
Have you ever asked yourself, why are we so obsessed with beauty? So what made the Miss New Zealand contest so special?
So Miss New Zealand, when I was a kid, was a family sit-down moment.
It was an era when the Miss New Zealand was quite a normal thing to do.
As a young woman growing up, it was quite a thing.
It was like watching Barbies on television. Back then, you wanted to be that princess. You wanted to have the crown and the sash. Everyone wanted that.
I imagined that crown on my head, that prize money in my pocket, and myself strutting down that runway.
It was a bit, I suppose it's like watching a royal wedding. Everyone got together and commentated on what people were wearing and how everybody looked. And I can remember as a kid just being kind of wowed by the whole thing, and it seemed like such a massive production.
It's actually a fact that more people watched the Miss New Zealand contest in the early 1980s than the wedding of Prince Charles and Lady Diana.
They were golden moments.
Back in the day, it was like, yes, we lined up as judges and the girls lined up and it was all very kosher and everything was very elegant and the girls were treated really well.
So 1961 was a special year for Miss New Zealand because it was the very first year of the show. 5 anxious girls, outwardly composed and exposed, offer themselves to the extremely critical gaze of the audience and the judges. The judges note the finer points from every angle. They're not allowed to touch these offerings, though.
My mum was actually Miss Northland. She won Miss Northland in January of that year out at Orewa Beach, very glamorous, and she ended up in the Miss New Zealand contest. And she needed a really sexy swimsuit for that, so she knitted her own.
To knit your own swimsuit, and it looks absolutely incredible.
And she came second. She would love to have won, but unfortunately when they asked her what her dreams were for the future, she said, "I'm getting married in November."
She should have won, my God, yes. Fully.
Huh?
For sure.
Actually, I think she was quite lucky, because if she had won, I probably wouldn't even be here.
Who looked like Bridget Bardot? Elaine Micall. Who looked like Elaine Micall? Bridget Bardot.
Wow. I actually haven't heard that before, but it's lovely. Thank you very much.
Well, Elaine was stunningly beautiful, for one thing. She's a natural beauty.
To me, Elaine's beauty was her colouring.
Pretty famous in New Zealand. Real famous, yeah. Because I was a youngster and I just thought, oh, she's gorgeous. And I looked up to her before I even was old enough to be a judge.
My mother and father thought she was just the beauty, and she really was, very Grace Kelly.
That cool Hitchcock blonde.
Elaine had a very modern sort of beauty. It's timeless. If you put her sort of beauty in the Miss World contest today, it would still do well.
Mum forced me into going into it. I think she always dreamed that someone in the family might be famous in some way. I was doing a little bit of modelling in Wellington, and she said, "Look, why don't you go in for Miss New Zealand?" And I said, "Oh, Mum, I don't think I'd be a suitable candidate." For a start, no one travelled the way they do today. Girls travel. We were still all brought up that we were going to be married and be mothers, and that was it. All these girls that were in the contest were very natural. I mean, no one had their teeth done. No one had Botox or fillers or had their boobs done. My parents were absolutely delighted. My father was the eldest of 11 children, grew up during the Depression, so he had very little of anything. And to have his daughter become Miss New Zealand was just I can't describe. I think he was more excited than I was. We all met, and we got to know one of the girls, got to know one another, and then we went off in a bus all over the country. The entertainers and the girls, as you can imagine, it was quite hilarious with the entertainers and the girls all travelling together. Quite a unique experience for me because I was only 18 and found it quite hilarious, and I learnt a lot and grew up a lot on that trip. Television, I think, was just beginning in New Zealand, and it was very early days for television, and so Miss New Zealand was really quite something. I got a photo somewhere of the minute it was announced, and I have to say I was terribly excited. I think that was more exciting than being runner-up to Miss World, to be honest, because I knew what was lying ahead. They asked me about the All Blacks, and I had heard that they'd been defeated.
Have you been following the All Blacks rugby tour here?
Well, I have, but I heard, unfortunately, that they lost here.
Only once, though. They'll be delighted to meet you, I'm sure.
I'm hoping to meet them.
Which was really extremely bad in those days because the All Blacks were, and still are, kings of the rugby world. As you can see, the girls around me were all lovely, so, you know, I was very excited to get down to the final 7, to be honest. That was possibly even more exciting than getting second. I thought, oh my goodness, I'm in the final 7 of Miss World. It is an international contest. You are on an international stage, and it was pretty big time in those days.
Peter Sellers wouldn't tell us anything, but could it be Miss New Zealand, a 19-year-old from Wellington?
Peter Sellers was actually a judge in 1963, and he leaked to the press that he voted for Elaine to win.
Runner-up to Miss World, Miss New Zealand.
And Miss New Zealand gets £500 and the silver trophy.
the Duke of Bedford picked me as the winner because he came up afterwards and told me that he felt I was his winner, and he was very sad that I hadn't won.
So we found out through the newspapers that Elaine was runner-up to Miss World, and it was very exciting for us as a country.
I won £1,000, and I came back to New Zealand, and in those days you had to have overseas funds to buy a car. And of course I left my £1,000 in England, and I was able to buy a brand new car, which I was terribly excited about.
Bob Hope kind of had an obsession with Miss World winners, and he always took the winner on his world tour performing to troops.
I am very, very happy to be here at this cattle market tonight. Moo! No, it's quite a cattle market. I've been back there checking calves.
It was the first time that Bob Hope had asked a runner-up to Miss World to go on his tour. Normally it had been a Miss World, and I was extremely flattered, but I just met my husband and I wanted to come home. Big mistake. Well, I had a 12-month contract, and during that period you toured all the time. I had a lot of work and spent the entire year travelling.
I hadn't met Elaine until she came to Auckland as Miss New Zealand, and then of course married John Daly, and they became a very high-profile couple.
The day I got married, it was unbelievable. It was just the whole city stopped and traffic stopped, and yes, it was, really quite different, very glamorous.